So I want to talk today about continuing our conversation about identity. So to kind of like summarize what we've been talking about for the past 2 weeks, I want to initially begin to quickly explain to you that your identity, who you think you are, is not who you are. A lot of it is created because all true authentic self, the true purpose for which we were created, the true authentic nature, is a breakable, vulnerable point that exists so deep in our core that it is so fragile upon our own self-examination and perception that when we see it, we tend to bury it because we instinctively understand, even as little children, that the world will destroy it. And we understand that what socialization of human being does is that it wants you to behave in specific manner. So therefore, there is a behavior that's expected to you with your family. There's a behavior at the church. There's a behavior at school. There's a behavior in your work environment. And all of these different behaviors are personas. A persona is not just sets of rule and regulation that you follow, but it's a splinter psyche. It comes with response, with its own individual intelligence. It's highly sophisticated. It's literally a splinter psyche. And so we wear these multiple masks, and throughout the day, one can slip. Like you get up in the morning, you're with your family, you have one persona. You get to work, persona number 2 shows up. You're done with work, you go meet with your friend at the gym, or you go running, third persona. Okay? You go back to your family, you go back to the first persona again. So you can slip into 3 or 4 different personas, and it happens so seamlessly that most of us actually believe that we are being true and authentic, when in fact our true core and essence is rarely touched or rarely expressed. And I wanted to talk about this because in the context of the fact that Lord Melchizedek gave us a big channeling about identity and the evolvement, the continual evolution of our identity, particularly now as we're going through this transit where things are shifted so quickly and are moving so quickly that we have to move through the identity after identity with agility. And a lot of time, our identity are connected to what we do. For example, for a man, their job typically relates to their identity. I'm a banker, I'm a lawyer, I'm a shoemaker, et cetera, et cetera. When this opportunity ends because of the shift, economically, financially, people get lost. If you are the caregiver, when the caregiving ends for you, the person either die or the opportunity for you to give ends, suddenly you don't know what to do with yourself anymore. You're lost. You're disoriented, completely disoriented. And so you have to shift into another identity. Now, but a lot of time we are comfortable with the current identity we exist in because it's a known factor, and we've been parked in it for so long that we don't want to evolve into something else, or rather we find it difficult to emancipate into something else. Now, it's not just identities, personas that we're dealing with. Sometimes also in the subconscious mind exists what I call complexes. And the complexes are more or less, before we get to complexes, we have programs. So a program would be somebody tell you, shut up here for too many times, and you have difficulty expressing your voice. You have difficulty telling people how you really feel. You fall down like a flower in the background. And so that's a negative program. A program can be reprogrammed with a lot of work. You can reprogram it and change the programming. And part of it's because anything that's repeated, either verbally or that is done in front of you or that you do yourself over and over again, becomes a habit, and that habit will sink into the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind will repeat it ad nauseam. And I want to make a big separation and difference between the conscious self and the subconscious self. The conscious self has morality. We've been domesticated to know what is higher and what is lower, what is a virtue, what is a vice. We've been domesticated and trained into understanding the difference between the two. The subconscious mind doesn't have morality. It's not that it is immoral, but it is that capacity doesn't exist in the subconscious mind. So if a program is negative and trying to stop you from expressing yourself, or cause you to harm yourself, or to believe, like, somebody kept saying to you, you'll never amount to nothing, or somebody kept screaming at you, I remember one client telling me that he kept hearing all the time, you're just a waste, you're a waste, you're a waste. Well, your worth and your value will diminish because of this. The subconscious mind doesn't understand that program, that repeat pattern, although it was done abusively by an adult, it doesn't comprehend that part, that negative part, is harmful to you. The subconscious mind has one ability, and that one ability is that whatever is programmed in the subconscious mind gets created and gets repeated ad nauseam. So you could have a program there that says, you're a beautiful human being, and you can accomplish anything you want. And then on the other hand, somebody else said to you, something is wrong with you. You're not normal. And both of them could cohabit your subconscious mind, and they are both trying to trying to hijack your consciousness for dominance and for control, so that they can be made conscious. This is the nature of the subconscious mind. It doesn't have morality. It doesn't understand what's hurting you or what's actually, because what you want to do, ideally, when you're looking at your subconscious mind, is to examine to see what is positive and what is empowering, and keep those habits and those programs. And then you want to change and transform those who are negative by reprogramming them into something that's positive. And the way you reprogram, you have to first delete the previous belief system, okay, by realizing there was a false belief that was anchored in there. And then you have been, after 21, and you have to spend another 21 days repeating new program that will anchor in you a positive, a different and positive outlook. For example, if you were disempowered and you had no power, the personal power program that I've distributed to some of you will allow you, for example, first to ask Master Dwakul or Melchizedek and all this higher celestial being to anchor in them the core fear matrix removal programming, to empty the vessel in the subconscious mind that's holding these negative programs. So the deletion. And then the issue, and this is what a lot of coaches, a lot of healers don't do this. They don't do the deletion. They think it's just creating a positive program to replace this one. This is not the way it works. If you put more and more positive program, they will internally battle with each other for control. You will create more war, and there will be no peace internally. So you have to first delete the negative program and allow for a replacement to be created by creating affirmation or positive habits throughout the day that are repeated over 21 days, so that it will anchor and ground within yourself. And I wanted to describe this as it relates to program. When you have a complex is typically something that got created because of a trauma a severe trauma that is so shocking that it fractures your psyche and split it. I have explained to you in previous classes that when I was younger, at 4 years old, I saw my father trying to kill my mom. That was a major trauma for me, a fracturing event, and that fracturing event splintered my psyche. And what it did at that moment is that I'm using myself as an example to illustrate the difference between the program and a complex. So what it did for me at that moment is that I remember very clearly at that moment saying to myself, I will never be put in the position that my mother is in. My mother is in the position because he's dependent on my dad. Therefore, I will need nothing from him or anything that looks like him. I will be self-sufficient. And the way I moved after that thought about becoming self-sufficient is that the only way I knew, so my dad was giving to my mother, we were dependent financially on him. The way I did go about this is that I started giving to everyone. I gave excessively, I give all the time. It became like a completely derailed habit. And when I discovered this, and it scared me, I remember when Spirit revealed this to me, I saw this during a meditation, during an internal query with myself. And I'm going to talk about the query for a second and the importance it has in what I'm describing, or I've been describing to you now for 3 classes in a row. 3 classes in a row. So here's the first thing. So when I discovered this, I remember being so scared. I'm like, oh my God, I've been doing this my entire life. What do? I was so afraid. And my higher self, when I'm doing the query, I'm talking to myself, my higher self spoke to me and said, I don't require this from you. And then it continued, it says, if I were to give to everyone in the planet everything that they wanted, there would be left over in me infinity times infinity. And I remember at that point, my head exploded because I couldn't comprehend the number infinity times infinity. I never heard this before. My head just exploded. And I got transported into heights that I'm like, oh my God. And I've been giving for myself. I've been doing all of this for me because when I said I will not receive, I will not be dependent, I even blocked the blessings that were coming from God. I blocked them because my father was the representative of the divine masculine archetype for a child. I blocked it because I didn't want to be dependent on him. And so it was immense. It was so, that the whole structure was so big for me. I got so terrified. I'm like, so what do I do? And here is what my higher self told me. And this is the power of giving a higher assignment to a complex. You cannot reprogram a complex. It's too sophisticated. It's too far advanced. You cannot try to erase it, empty it, and put something else in. It said simply to me, give and receive, not from yourself, but from infinity times infinity. And my whole being went into a state of rest and bliss. So we talked about subconsciousness, the subconscious mind, or rather the unconscious mind and its qualities, program complexes. I want to talk about the third aspect of the subconscious mind, which are called the archetypes. And the reason I'm talking about these is that these things, the programs, the complexes, and the archetypes can become identities. In other words, they can hijack your consciousness, your conscious self, your self-awareness, where morality exists, where you understand good versus bad. And the reason for this is that all subconscious content because it doesn't have morality, will have you behave in a certain way autonomously. It's like riding a bicycle. Once you learn how to ride a bicycle, you don't think about ever how to do it anymore. You just go on the bicycle and you go. That's the power of the subconscious mind. It helps your hair grow, it helps your nail grow, it helps the circulation of your blood, it helps you breathe automatically. It renews the cells in your body. This is all subconscious functioning. So it has incredible intelligent factors, but it works in a very specific way. Whatever is programmed in, it's what you're going to get out. So we should really be careful what we're feeding our subconscious mind. The kind of radio program, TV program, what app, what internet, what you're watching on mass media, all of this will go in the subconscious mind and create internal chaos for you. You have to watch what you're feeding yourself. So the archetypes, there are 12 major archetypes. You have the destroyer archetype, and it has a positive aspect and a negative aspect. The positive, it's the positive aspect of the first ray of will and power to destroy the old and make way for the new. And use of destruction of negative ego in all manifestation, owing your personal power. Negative aspect, destruction and glorify violence, abuse, control, dominance, power, use and self-service, and even criminal behavior. You also have, it's 12 basic one, 12 core archetype. You have then the fool. It is the risk taker, humor, the use of positive manner, surrendering to God, jump, and the net will appear. That's the positive aspect. Negative aspect, scattered brain, being foolhardy, blind, gullible, being controlled and manipulated, and having no spiritual discernment. The innocent or the child is the next one, and it is positive aspect, fresh, untarnished, innocent perception, being childlike, the inner child, integrated into the totality of self, purity, the holy encounter. Because your inner child is really, in a sense, where most people hold their authentic core. It is inside this archetype that most of us bury our true authentic nature. Negative aspect, being naive and childlike and not being able to see darkness in self and in others, the wounded inner child, the broken and wounded inner child. The next archetype, the fourth one, is the martyr. Oh, the magician, sometimes called the priest or the priestess. True alchemist and transformation of the four body system. The white magician, egoless, true servant of the divine, Merlin, Moses, Gandalf, the white. Positive aspect, right? Negative aspect, use magic for the purpose of manipulation, to seduce others, to follow oneself, false gurus, counselors, prophet, and black magician. There's a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing. There's a lot of people who are teaching or being influenced by the negative aspect of this magician or priest or priestess archetype. The martyr, next archetype. It is connected to the positive aspect. The positive aspect is the saint, the vow of the bodhisattva. The higher you go, the more you realize that the main reason for being is to be of service. Negative aspect, personal sacrifices, but does so as a mean to manipulate and control others. There is a time to be selfless and a time to be spiritually selfish. It is also a negative aspect of this is the false sacrifice. It's people who think suffering is noble. And in order for me to be saved or to be spiritually enlightened, I have to be nailed to the cross. I have to suffer. The matriarch and the patriarch is the next archetype. An aspect is tough love, proper use of personal power, unconditional self-love, parenting the inner child correctly. Negative aspect, weak father, mother, not protecting the inner or the outer child, being wishy-washy, totalitarian, control obsessed, being overprotective, hence feminine, masculine imbalance. Next archetype, the ruler. Divine objectivity and fairness, wisdom, King Solomon, decisiveness, rule over our thoughts, emotion, personality, archetype, instinct, sensation, intuition, and being a leader of yourself and others. Now, that archetype is very much connected to the idea of personal power, or the concept of also being in your personal power. Though this is the positive aspect. Negative aspect, tyrannical, totalitarian, domineering, manipulative leader, drunk with power, negative aspect of the first way, superiority, inferiority complex, narcissism. Next archetype, the seducer. Positive aspect of the seducer, spiritual scale, person of God, egoless, oneness, salesman with pure motivation, positive use of self-talk, proper balancing of sexual energy, the Tao of sex, motivational speaker, great spiritual teacher. I've said this to you before, that there is not one ascended master that does not seduce from God. In other words, when they are present, because that seducer archetype is actually connected to the energy of love. So it can be carnal or physical love, or it can be the higher love, which is agape, the love that is egoless, that radiates out in order for it to give you understanding and wisdom, so that you can begin to share with others when you're doing this, the liberation that you know. Negative aspect of the seducer, manipulation, bribery, molestation, narcissistic love, hedonism, self-indulgence and corruption, deceivers, the tempter or the temptress. Next aspect, and this is connected to what we were talking about a little bit before we started recording, people who are looking for adventure, well, they are being, because of l'ennui, the seeker archetype, adventurer, explorer, that's the positive aspect, pioneer, wanderer, seeker who seek the inner rather than the outer. Seek ye the kingdom of God, and all things will be added unto thee. So the idea is to seek the kingdom of God as the seeker. That's the higher aspects of it. The lower aspect, person who seek materialistic goals and gain. They're after making 7, 8, 9, 10-figure income. They're after achievement in the world. They're after fame, after having, particularly now with mass media, more likes, having a lot of followers. Again, they're seeking the wrong thing. All the materialistic, hedonistic, and intellectual development, but not God. The next archetype, the servant. And this one, unlike the ruler, it's the exact opposite frequency from the ruler. The servant of God, the master of humanity, serving from, this is the positive aspect, from wholeness instead of from emptiness. When you are a servant of God, you're serving because you're complete and you're whole, and you know that the collective morphogenic field is going to take care of you. Some people serve because they don't want to make decision, and they rather somebody tell them what to do. That's a deficiency. You're serving because you're empty. The vow of the Bodhisattva, true pleasure is serving God. Negative aspect, servant of others, which comes from lack of self-worth. This is the negative aspect, or personal power. The people who were in Jamestown who drank the Kool-Aid, they were in that negative aspect of the servant. The people who are in any kind of cult, even political cult, as we look around the world right now, they are manifesting. They are not connected to anything else but the servant, the negative aspect of the servant archetype. And when it's an archetype, it's immense. It's way more difficult to shake somebody out of. When an archetype is activated, it's way more difficult for somebody to. This is why we're witnessing this in political circle. People who are manifesting that aspect. It doesn't matter what the person they have deified as their savior, their avatar. It doesn't matter what that person does. They will always serve it because it's an archetype that has been activated. Servant of others, which comes from lack of self-worth and personal power, being a slave to addiction, drug, alcohol, bad habit, obsessive thought, feeling, sexuality, food, or being gaslight. Hitler did the same thing. And everybody obeyed. Everybody obediently went and moved along. Okay, the next archetype, the warrior archetype. Positive aspect, spiritual warrior, fighting for love, oneness, and for the good of the whole, owning your power, weapons or love, prayer of God, prayer and God. Get up and give up your. This is from the Bhagavad Krishna said to Arjuna, this very quote in the Bhagavad Gita. Get up and give up your unmanliness and get up and fight. This self-pity is unbecoming of the great soul that you are. This is Krishna trying to encourage his disciple Arjuna to become the warrior. Negative aspect, unevolved soul who is run by negative ego, criminal behavior, negative anger, abusive behavior, bullying, attack thought toward others. And finally, the 12th and final archetype, which is the most ascended, the wise one. Positive aspect, true teacher who seek to empower their student and make them equal, fair, and witness and observers. He's seeking to make everyone an equal to him, a witness or an observer. You are the president or the director of all archetype. Negative aspect, using wisdom to control others, to manipulate, demean, gain fame or power, money, and praise, and special status. This is people, there's a lot of them out there who are pretending to be wise one and guru and all that. They are not wise one. What they are doing is that they're using spiritual teaching and lingo to corrupt people into obedience and become servant, activating in them the servant archetype so that they will be coordinating them into complete obedience. I don't expect you to remember all of this, but I thought I should mention it here because somebody had asked last week what the 12 archetypes are. I wanted to go over them at least briefly to give you an idea. Any questions, any comments? Now, I want to say before I hear from you, I want to say one more thing about the archetypes. The archetypes are not, everybody has them. Everything I just described now exists in every person that's alive. There's not one person that has them, and you cannot divorce them and amputate any of them out. They are unconscious patterns that all living beings have, and external circumstances and events can trigger them into manifestation, and they can polarize and control our consciousness for extended period of time. I told you of my experience with my destroyer for 3 years. They can basically take over. And then you begin to destroy and walk away and do all kinds of things that you who have morality would have never done in any other circumstances. So when you watch your behavior and how you react to things and to people, etc., if you're noticing that there are certain moments where you become somebody else and something inside of you take over and seem to do it with glee or with enjoyment or with delight, and although you know the part of you that has the morality, the ego self, the conscious self that has the morality knows better, but you're still doing it, it's an archetype. And you need to identify what archetype it is. And in order for you to find neutrality and resolution, you need to negotiate the ego self, the conscious self, and that archetype must talk. There are times where we have to become the warrior, where we have to defend friends and family members. There are times we have to be the destroyer. We have to level things out to protect ourselves and protect others. There are times we have to be the seducer. There are times we have to be the ruler. There are times we have to be the magician, the priest or the priestess. There are times we have to be the, the seducer. And these unconscious preconceived patterns, if you're not cognizant, and this is where I was talking about the query, the internal dialogue, okay, whether it was the Dantian or any other kind of query that we're doing, this is where it becomes extremely important. Because if you're doing the daily practice of doing the universal breath, and then 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes for universal breath, and then 5 minutes to sit down and begin to examine your core without any preconceived notion, just sitting down and thinking of that vertical column of your antakarana that's inside of you and examining what is in it and what shows up for you. What kind of axis exists in it? What kind of emotion, quality may be in there at that moment? In other words, you're listening for anything that may exist with no preconceived notion. That in itself is self-assessment. And that self-assessment is the key to ascension. Because with that, doing this practice on a daily basis, it will begin to illuminate for you when any of the things I just described have or attempted to hijack your consciousness. And you will know that that's not me, that's a different axis, something else is in there. And it's not an archon, it's not it's not Satan, it's not Lucifer, it's something else. It's an archetype. It's an archetype inside of me that desires to, do whatever it's doing at the moment. And if for you, from a moral standpoint, that behavior is unwarranted at that moment, you need to talk to the archetype and ask it to move back. Guess what? The chooser, the ego, and the conscious self controls all of them. And that's the role that needs to happen. And that's what I had to do with my destroyer. I had to go in and tell the destroyer, I'm not divorcing you, I'm not amputating you out of my life, but you cannot remain in control like you have for the past 3 years. You are disrupting my life and you're turning me into a being that I'm not. I'm not a cruel person, and I've noticed a trail of cruelty being left behind. And therefore, I am negotiating with you a truce. I'm going to need you for my defense. And when I need you, or when a certain outside circumstance present itself, I, the chooser, will call you. Or if you're coming in, I need to be aware that you're coming in. Because why? Because once an archetype comes in, let's say the warrior archetype, or the seducer, or the seeker, or the servant, or the ruler, doesn't matter. Once that archetype comes in, when the situation on the external is over, you have to send it back in the subconscious mind. It has to sink down into what is called abaissement du niveau mental, the lowering of your mental level into the subconscious mind. It has to go sink below, because if it doesn't, it will remain in charge. I, the chooser, the conscious self, must be in charge of all these processes. Okay, I've said a lot. Any questions and comments?
I do have a question here. The part I'm struggling a little bit to understand is that all of the archetypes, the 12 principal archetypes, at least or more, are right for us to have. Our makeup is incomplete without them, because we may need to call upon that archetype at any point in our lives. At what point they become out of control, I guess, is when you need to negotiate with them to balance them better. That must be difficult to judge when that's happening, if they are the ones in control and see that behavior as normal, though.
Okay, so I'm going to use myself as an example. So when that destroyer archetype was happening, I have to tell you that a lot of my friends love that archetype because she's very entertaining. She comes in, she destroys everybody. She's fast, she's quick. She analyzes things quickly. She just rips everything apart and throws it. She creates chaos, explosion, and then it's very funny. But she does it with a lot of humor, and everybody's destroyed. You know, but the emotional damage, because the things that are being done are very cruel. It's an exposure of people weaknesses, because she's very fast. Right? And for a while there, it created an illusion of control. And the reason that archetype came in for me, it's because given what my dad did and the abuse that I witnessed, I never had a sense of control of anything. It was trying to support me by giving me the illusion that I was in control of something. Okay? So it attempted to actually plug a deficiency in my ego, in another part of my subconscious mind, which was the fracture, the complex that my dad created for me. It tried to plug it. But because it was not conscious, I didn't even know it was being done. It did it clunkily. It was not smooth, and more to the point. The more you suppress something, because that destroyer was suppressed for a long time, the more perverted the expression becomes. What you resist persists. It not only persists, it becomes bigger. So because I never acknowledged it, I never conversed with it, I never had any, when it showed up completely autonomously. It did what it thought was correct to do.
So is that a programming or a complex?
That's the archetype.
That's the archetype in response to your
To-
dad's
To the
behavior.
complex to the deficiency in the complex of what happened with me and my dad. Yes.
Yeah, because one thing I can identify with in a little progress or big progress, little steps, which is big progress for me, is similar with my dad, as we've talked about, and then the effect of the criminals, which we've talked about, is that what you said, like I don't want to be like them, so then I cut myself off from the receiving. You know, I'm not going to accept anything, like you were saying. I don't need anything. I don't need to be anything connected to this behavior or this kind of people. It's like a rigid defense, which does, I see, cut oneself or myself off from receiving from the infinity, you know, or what was the thing you told me about your friend saying everything is from the goddess?
Yeah. Lashmi. Yes. Mhm.
Lashmi, yeah, it's all from infinity or Lashmi. Yeah, and the second part that I've been seeing that's somehow connected to coping with difficult people and the imprint from growing up like that, with especially a father like that, is that I've noticed recently, the more I'm in my calm center, like that I have certain friends who just say negative things that I don't want to hear. And that instead of being kind and nice and just listening, I've just been saying, you know, either enough of that, or what is your choice in this matter, or realizing I don't need to be in this kind of relationship with those people. It's something to do, actually, a counselor who was helping me, Pierre, she was saying, like, well, we all might want to, like, the indoctrination of the Catholic Church, be like Jesus, but I don't know why this clicked for me, but we're not Jesus.
Yeah.
We're not Jesus. We may follow him in the church or believe in him as a companion, a friend, but and so, you know, this week it's just like for some strange reason, so many people I know are ill, and listening to the weird ways they're coping with their illnesses. A lot of them said, well, you know, you're free to do whatever you want, and I support you, but I don't want to hear this negativity. Let's say you choose, so be it. And that's like I think the flexible boundary is the term for my own health, for my own inner core, for to stop that negative, you know, destroyer from coming up, you know, or being put upon. So there's some individual freedom I'm starting to feel in that. It's a lot of processing, like you said, to delete. I think they used to call it see the message, delete the message, and then reprogram yourself, like in a computer. It's not easy to do, because even just becoming aware of the imprint.
Yeah, this is, and it goes back to what Janice was asking just now, which is that the only way I was discovering that the archetype was acting, it's because people reflected it back to me. I didn't see it.
Right. Well,
It
it's
took me
our
3 years. It took 3 years of somebody, and I remember exactly the incident where I began to realize this is not me. Something is wrong. I was at the,
right.
and I remember what happened. I won't get into all the detail. And I said something that was extremely cruel, and I was cackling of joy and glee because of what I said, and blah, blah, blah. And then this one a guy who looked at me and said, "My God, Pierre, you're evil."
What has happened to you?
And then when that happened, it was a wake-up call. Something snapped inside of me. I'm like, he's absolutely right. This is cruel reaction and behavior.
Yeah.
But this is not me.
Well,
Who,
you know, maybe
who is this that's doing this to me? Who is this? And it's at that moment that I realized it was the destroyer archetype.
I think the other thing, when someone is a suppressed child and you feel powerless and you can't do anything about something, that has a stored charge. You know, and when the child wakes up that it can make a difference, it might be overreactive at first. You know, like,
well, what I'm saying to you is that we the timing in which you become aware that it's an archetype is not in our control. It took me 3 years to get it, okay? And another 3 months to negotiate terms so that the destroyer can find its balance place in the economy of my own psyche.
I see, okay,
It's as simple as that. You're not gonna see it at first. Your reaction and your behavior is going to be erratic, crazy, and all that. And then in hindsight, you're going to see it. When someone mirrors it and points it out, you're going to see it. You're going to say, okay, this is this archetype. This is because when the archetype comes in and takes over, you think it's you. You think it's your identity. Do you see what I mean, Janice?
Exactly. That was what my thought was. The hardest part would be the discernment to recognize it.
Right. This is why I'm reading all of these various archetypes and what they are, and I'm asking you to do this daily practice of examining your core, the self-assessment.
Mhm.
Because that's the only way I know to actually get some clarity. Energy doesn't lie. We lie to ourselves all the time. But if you do that kind of self-assessment and you try to figure out, and if you feel something, ask it who he is. What is that? I'm feeling a certain kind of, what is that feeling? What does it represent?
yeah, yeah,
And if you talk to it, it doesn't have a choice but to answer. Energy doesn't lie. We lie, but the energy doesn't lie. That's why we're doing the dancing. That's why we're doing the query. That's why we're constantly examining self and trying to discover. Because what is ascendance? Ascension can only happen, enlightenment can only happen when we become self-aware, when we emancipate from being unconscious tendencies in emptiness into having conscious immortality. And that requires for us at all time, or most of the time, to be aware where our consciousness is. And what aspect of ourselves our consciousness is communicating with. Any other questions or comments?
Is there a celestial being? You mentioned Dwakul to help remove programming.
Yes.
Is there a celestial being that you would recommend we call upon to assist us in our self-examination?
God.
Well, that can't do higher than that.
Yes. you need to come, because when you're doing that query and you're examining your core, you're trying to talk to whatever your understanding of God is at the moment. That's what you're trying to communicate with.
Uh-huh.
That internal query of your core, you're actually talking to your God. And the insight that you get, trust it. Trust it. I was sharing with the class this morning that I had a conversation with somebody that I met a week and a half ago on the waterfront. And there was an instinct, there was not many negative, but instinctively when this woman came and started talking to us, to me and my two friends, I had an initial reaction that like a voice inside of me that told me something about her. And I thought, oh, that's not what it is. It's you're being fanciful. And we had the conversation. Well, I saw her yesterday, and in the course of the conversation, she confirmed that my initial thought was correct. So that part of me, that same voice, that knows the truth, can reveal the truth to you about everything that's happening around you. And its assessment is always correct. And the first thing you feel or hear is right. The second thing is incorrect.
Would it be an imposition to ask you to post the archetype descriptions. I could not get everything down.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you. I'll send you the PDF.
I'll
Oh,
I'll take it too.
Okay, yeah, I'll send
Yeah,
it.
because I was gonna go to the library and listen on the headset and write it down because it's too much to digest.
Yeah, I'll send the PDF because it's a lot of information. It's a lot
I
of,
u- Yeah, on what Janice, what were you saying before that, though, here, I used to say that to my young daughter, trust your first self,
Mhm.
because I don't quite know why, she used to like go back and forth debating things, and I used to say, what was your first instinct?
Yes,
What was your first feeling?
yep, absolutely. And that first feeling is always right. So when I get these instinctual awareness and they show up, we all need to listen to them. And it confirmed for me when I'm getting it about internal processes. So this was somebody on the outside, but if it was true also with someone that I don't know on the outside, it's also true when I'm getting it about aspects of myself.
Right,
But when that information comes in, it's also accurate. So if it's telling me this is the magician archetype, or this is the negative aspect of the destroyer, or the positive aspect of the seducer, or the positive aspect of the magician, or the wise one, or the martyr. For those of us who are grow Christian, the martyr archetype is huge. Many of us think we have to suffer in order for it to achieve anything. So we create all these, and particularly when that archetype is triggered, we create all these circumstances where we go through suffering because we think it's noble. Or at least the archetype, the negative aspect of it, is understanding the suffering as being noble.
so actually, since all of the archetypes are in us, it's only the negative aspect of them that we need to be aware and watch for. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the negative aspect that we need to somehow help the archetype, because the archetype doesn't have morality. We need to be the moral barometer when the archetype comes in so that that negative aspect does not hurt us or hurt other people. Hurting myself is one thing, but when I'm telling you, when I did what I did with the destroyer, the memory of the chaos I created, I had to live with. I don't feel guilty about it anymore. I did at some point. I don't feel guilty about it anymore. It's the past, it's a mistake. And I have to live with it. But let's just say it was extremely unascended. I was the life of the party because she's very fast, very quick. She's entertaining, and the way she's witty. She is, she's the center of attention. But it is, in terms of morality and ethic, nothing about it was ascended. Now, the positive aspect of the destroyer, I want you to know that as well, is that when I'm in need of her, and I explained that experience before when I was part of the mystery school, we were near a methadone clinic on 14th Street on Irving Place, and at one point, one of the drug addict walked into the front door while we were having a spiritual meeting there, and was laying on the entrance, and you know how they pass out and they can't move, they go into a hole and they can't move, and everybody was moving to give it healing, to give him healing. And I came from the back because I was helping in the kitchen, and I got fed up with the whole thing, and the destroyer just walked in. In less than a minute, he was out the door. Because the archetype, the destroyer came in and said, I'm telling you, like commanded, everybody in the room was in shock. And then since I hadn't done my negotiation already, and I asked it to withdraw, it withdrew. The chooser, came back in. I said to everybody, I'm gonna go and finish the coffee, and the sandwiches will be ready in a few minutes, and I'll just walk to the back. So it's a different type of energy. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it walked in, it did what it needed to do. That's the positive aspect of it. It chased away that crazy person that was like derailing, and as I said, blocked the entranceway for like 30 minutes. Everybody was like, well, he has all these track in his hand. He was shooting heroin or something, blah, blah, blah. What should we do? Blah, blah. I was like, I just came in like this, and he was out. So the destroyer is capable of helping you. And I have to say to you, the other aspect of the destroyer, for example, that's also very useful, is that if you are in crisis and you're having some sort of like situation in which you need protection. Let's say, for example, you're under attack by an archon, or you're under attack by some other force like that. The destroyer, you can call upon the destroyer to protect you, to cast out that archon out from your field, and it will do it. Or the warrior, you can ask it to cast it out. I don't want you to think that just because you see the name destroyer, it's all negative. It's not negative at all. It served its purpose in the economy of our psyche. What is the destroyer? It's the force and the energy that cause a woman to abort naturally fetuses that are not viable to bring a healthy child to maturity. That's what the destroyer is. So we should understand it in a completely different way, that all these archetypes, again, as Janice, you were saying, the negative aspects of them, or what we have to figure out. Because when they come in, they come in with both the positive and the negative aspect. But when we're aware of the negative aspect, when it begins to, sometimes initially, particularly initially, when you're dealing with them, let's say the warrior comes in, and you're just learning, because so there is a learning curve. When you begin to talk to the archetypes, you will not initially know the difference, for example, between the destroyer or the warrior, because they're so close to each other. Okay? Or the difference between certain aspect of one archetype or another. Okay? The ruler has certain aspect that may be similar to even positive aspect of another archetype. So you may not see the difference, but over time you will get the difference. And once you get it, you will also know that when the archetype shows up, there is the possibility that the negative influence may show up behind it. Or for that matter, that you call the destroyer the ruler or the seducer, and it came in, but it came in now not only with the agape love, but there is also the sexual desire and the lusting and a rush of a different energy that comes with it too. And when that comes in, you need to understand it's still the archetype. It's not really you. It's not the I, the chooser. It's the archetype, and you need to ask it to withdraw. And sometimes you think it has withdrawn, and it hasn't withdrawn. It has to go. Carl Gustav Jung described it as an iceberg, that the ego self or the conscious self is the top of the iceberg, and at the bottom, the vast mass is the subconscious mind. When the archetypes comes in, or any subconscious content, they go on top and they absorb, they take over the ego, the I, the conscious self. But what happened is that they need to go below the water. This is why he used the French term abaissement du niveau mental. It needs to go lower, to the lower part of consciousness. In an ideal situation where you're completely ascended, is that all of these aspects are working together. Either chooser makes the decision, no subconscious content can rise to the surface without letting the ego, either chooser, become aware that it's rising. And once it's finished doing its function, the ego self sends it back and it sinks down into the subconscious mind. Smoothly, effortlessly, everything works together. But it takes years to arrive at this kind of control in this internal economy of our psyche. Any questions, any comments? This is the document that I'm going to be sending to you. Now, it only represents it's a major portion of the subconscious mind. In this document, it does not represent or nor have what the negative explanation about negative programs nor complexes. Or personas and all these other things. It doesn't have that. It's just specifically related to archetypes. And the reason the archetypes are important is that, what's the best way to describe this? So I have a destroyer archetype, I have an innocent, I have the magician, I have the seducer, the ruler, and all these other 12 aspects. But everyone on the planet equally have them. So when my destroyer or my innocent or my seducer or my ruler are activated, guess what? I tap into the collective unconscious ruler of 9 billion people on Earth as well. So when an archetype comes in and takes over your consciousness, the effect, positively or negatively, that they create in your world, internally and externally, are much more dramatic than if it was a complex or a negative program. Because you are tapping now in the collective unconscious. Does that make any sense?
That brings up a very interesting point. You need to, in your query, ask if it's you or if it is outside you, that is the collective that's expressing.
Yep.
Much like, if you were looking for archon influence in some emotional, explosive nature that experience you're having. So if you're seeing some negative aspect of the archetype, then would you ask if this is you or the collective that you're tied into?
Yes, you can do that, but the collective unconscious archetype, let's say of the destroyer or the ruler, would not come in. It can only come in through your own connection to that archetype itself. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, yes, for that archetype. What about the others? Do they, like the martyr or the?
It's the same thing.
Oh,
So
it has to be your involvement then, not just,
Yeah, you can't, it's not just, the external archetype of the model will not hijack you. It can only pass into you or activate in you through your own, to having also, through you also activating the archetype in you.
okay, okay.
You see what I'm saying? But I want you to be aware that the reason why it's so difficult to get it, it's because when they come in, the gift and the power that they bring is so potent that they change your body chemistry in your body, and they change the vibrational frequency that you exist in. And it's so potent and so powerful that a lot of us, well, we become unconscious. We allow it to move through.
You know what just struck me as you were saying that? It's
Yeah.
like putting a word on water, on a container of water.
Yes.
It changes the structure of the water. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I wonder if we should put a sign on our foreheads or something.
That's funny, Janice. Maybe we could have like stickum notes, you know, that with different times of the day. Like when people used to put affirmations on the mirror,
Yeah.
you know, in their bathroom,
You know,
good vibes and all that.
I'll tell you a funny story though. My half sister, who grew up with my dad, was very violent to all of us, and she spent most all of her life with my dad. And she has an anger management issue, much more. I mean, I was traumatized when I was, my parents divorced when I was 6 years old. I'm 8 years old, so I had limited exposure to him, but she had it all her whole life. And one time, and I know she has an anger management issue. One time, she posted her status on Facebook, heavily medicated for your own protection.
Wow.
I, I howled because I know her. I know what she's capable of doing. I know what she's saying, and I know what I was howling. I'm like, okay, I understand. I get it. Okay. So yes, talking about the signage. So the point being is that when the archetypes are activating, or they have to pass through us. And so when they show up, you don't know what's going on. You just know that you feel better, at least temporarily, because again, initially when the destroyer showed up for me, it helped me because I was feeling powerless and out of control, like dust in the wind. All of a sudden, I was in control. I was in charge. People were laughing at what I was saying. Instead of being the wallflower, I was the center of attention. It brought, to my mind, there was a lot of benefit. It changed a whole bunch of things around me. But over time, that's when I begin to see the cruelty. I'm not proud of it, but that's the reality. This is what it did, and it taught me tremendously. And what it taught me as well is that it gave me compassion for other people when I see other people who are completely hypnotized by their destroyer archetype. I get it. I can see it right away.
Well, it almost reminds me, and maybe this is very simple-minded what I'm saying, but like of when the teenager is coming into their own and they're having to resist things. It's almost like, you know, because I told you I also work with 2-year-olds, the 2 to 3-year-old, the terrible twos, you know, and then teenage years where this resistance and anger comes up. Yeah, to somehow, I mean, not a psychologist, but to define or limit or structure the inner core, especially after surviving such difficult childhoods with difficult, scary people. And, you know, that's why I feel that the simple thing I said, I noticed that it's like the handwriting, the fingernail on the blackboard with certain people recently have just said, well, you know, I do care, but this is enough. Can't listen to this.
And again, there is something else as well. It's not your responsibility to fix these people. Okay?
Yeah, and even just to be caring and to listen, it's just like, okay,
No, you don't need to listen. If the listening is disturbing your peace, don't listen.
yeah, I think that's what I came to today with, because I don't know why I seem to be around like maybe my aid or the desert. I don't know what it is, but like a whole bunch of people, not everyone, but who have let themselves become ill because they didn't believe in going to the doctor.
No.
And
No.
said, well, okay. And you know, the severe
There's a certain age or a certain group of people, when I talk to them, even my friends that I hang out with on a daily basis on the waterfront, they talk about their medical condition a lot, a lot.
right.
And it's there's a lot of that going on all the time. That, like, I would say a good 45% of the conversation is about their medical condition.
And
I want to discuss other things. I want to talk about what's happening
right,
in the world. I want to talk about serenity. I want to talk about expansion. I want to talk about other things.
right. And also progress or whatever. It's like I say, okay, well, whatever, it's your choice to if this is what you choose, so be it. I don't listen to it. If you want to go listen to music at the club
Yep.
that's open late night, not late, but 8 at sunset when it's cooler, I'll be going to listen to music.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of that Zen saying from way back. It's not a koan, but it's like the monk was walking down the road and near the cliff. And suddenly a tiger came running out and ran the monk to the end of the cliff, and the monk stumbled and fell over the cliff. And he was falling down the cliff, and he held onto a branch. And then the branch started bending, and he knew it was going to break. And then in front of him was a strawberry, and he got the strawberry and ate it and said, "My, how delicious!" It sounds funny, but because that's kind of how I dealt with my medical problem. Like, well, it'll either work or it won't work. You know, we'll explore the different options, and in the meantime, I'm going to enjoy the strawberries.
Mhm.
And or these, like when you used to talk about the Archon inflating the situation,
Yeah.
you know, way back when I sent you, like way back a cartoon I saw of the big bad wolf in the it was in a family room. They said every time we let this guy in the house, he causes an argument.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like, okay, whatever. And really like enough already. And I'm glad you told me I don't have to listen to it, because it's like it's a role I have put myself in some kind of conditioning mentally to be a good friend.
Well, it's the negative aspect of the martyr archetype.
Of the witch architect.
The martyr, the martyr.
Yeah, the martyr, yeah. And it's all part of that upbringing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes. It's
And a lot of it has to do with my mother. The more I'm becoming a lover, as I do very deeply, uh, you know, she's been gone 25 years, but like a situation, I don't quite know about your mother, where she did make excuses for dad. She did listen to stuff she didn't have to listen to, you know, because at that era, they, I guess, didn't have the mental freedom or the permission to do otherwise. Yeah, and it's like finally at this age, I'm getting a wake up call, and you mean, it's almost like in some part of me, oh, I'm being bad if I don't listen to this people's, oh, woe is me.
No, this is again, what you need to do is that you need to have a conversation with with your martyr archetype, the negative
Yeah, martyr architect, and it's also
realize, wait, let me finish this, and realize that you have to tell that martyr archetype, I don't need to save these people. It's not my responsibility. And
yeah,
I, the chooser, decide that morally speaking, I'm not responsible for them. Therefore, you need to withdraw into the subconscious mind and give me, Kit, I, the chooser, the ability to call upon you when I need you. You need to withdraw. You have hijacked my consciousness. You need to withdraw.
yeah, I see how much of this has permeated much of my life, in these defense mechanisms from the difficult childhood. I mean, I'm starting just to see it. You know, like you were saying, it takes you like, and part of it is like almost a fear, like, oh, wonder what I'll be if I don't do this.
Yes,
I wonder if I'm going to fall into some dark hole, and
yes.
Mother Fraser is going to be looking over and won't throw me a safety net. Like it's some
And
deep.
that fear comes from the program from the church that if you don't do this, there's something you're gonna burn in hell.
Yeah, burn hell, and it's against the commandments, and it's amazing how pervasive this indoctrination is in my own self.
Yes.
We're just inkling up enough, and it's really, I'm almost wondering, like, who am I on the other side of this?
Yes,
You know,
yes,
who am I?
exactly. That's the point that Lord Melchizedek was saying in the channeling. Who are you? Do you know who you are? Because the point is that all of that, all these things are lens and filters. They are therapin that have been created to domesticate you, to hold you back. They're chains that are locking you in place.
Yeah, they're very,
That is much bigger, much more. It's freedom. It's liberation.
very deep imprints of unconscious behavior from indoctrination from a young age. And I mean, I know these things intellectually, like there's that saying, another Zen saying, that the elephant thinks it's chained, but the elephant always had the strength to just move its foot. This was the way they trained elephants from a young era. They little chain around the foot and put it to the fence, and then the older elephant doesn't know. Oh, I just have to move the foot, and this chain would snap, and the elephant could go running free. But it's it really can be a heavy thing. And I don't think it has anything to do with what Jesus came on the planet Earth to do.
None of it has to do with Jesus. It has to do with men, church fathers, the prince of the church, who are trying to control people. It has nothing to do with Jesus. It's all man-made. It didn't come from God.
Yep. You know, it's so pervasive in so many church structures that there seems to be, this is a separate subject, like about the patriarchy, so to speak. Like, why do people, especially it seems men, I'm sure women do their thing too, but create these institutions to make everybody come under them, like this is the way. It's so cool.
It's the ruler archetype. It's the negative aspect of the ruler archetype. It's power. And again, they're doing it. And if you can think of all the people in the world, and I'm not talking about just the church, but people in corporation, people in government, people politicians who are seeking power, all of them are under the umbrella and the influence of the collective ruler archetype. It's immense. That's what I was trying to make you understand about the collective unconscious, the collective resonance of an archetype. It's much bigger than what exists in you. So if you have ruler issue or control issue and all that, that may exist in you. But when you tap into what exists for 9 billion people on Earth, it's immense.
Yeah, it's immense. Well, I remember, this is kind of a segue, but it is connected, like in studying art history, how, you know, art started to reflect the collective unconsciousness of the people, especially before World War II, you know, with the freedom in the paintings and the distress.
Even
God only knows what's happening now with the internet.
Even in the painting, Carl Gustav Jung, there's a whole bunch of things with even with the alchemist woodcut. Since time immemorial, the archetypes always. This is the point of the archetype: is that they predate life itself. This pattern exists even before there was life, and therefore they will show up in everything.
Okay, almost like the sacred flower, you know, or
yes,
yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All right, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll do a closing meditation. 5 minutes. Take a very deep and slow breath. And as you inhale and exhale deeply and slowly, allow the universal life force that permeates everything to enter into your lungs. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let your soul and your awareness drop in the middle of your chest. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Let your mind and your heart sync with each other. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. Breathe from the core of the earth and let this breath move through the bottom of your feet, passing through you, moving through your central axis, exiting outside of your head. And as you exhale, let it all be released into source. Surrender and let go. Take a breath from source and let this blessing cascade down into the top of your head, passing in through your core and central axis. Let it move through the bottom of your feet, and as you exhale, let it penetrate the core of the earth. Take a breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move through the bottom of your feet, passing through you, moving through your central axis, exiting outside of your head, and going into source, it is not my responsibility to fix or repair anything. Let go. Take a breath from the top of your head outside of time and space. Inhale the blessings from God and let it move into your body as it cascades through, passing through your core, exiting at the bottom of your feet, and exhale everything into the very core and center of the earth. Take another breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move through the bottom of your feet as it rises up, passing through your core, moving through you, exiting outside of yourself, exiting into source. Surrender and let go. Take a very deep breath from source and let this breath cascade down into you, the benevolence and the kindness of God, and let it drop into your body, bringing in an incessant and perpetual cascade of love, and let it drop into the core of the earth. Take a breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move to the bottom of your feet, passing through you, moving through your core, exiting outside of your head, and let it all be released completely into source. Surrender and let go. Take a deep breath from source and let the cascade of benevolence, kindness, love, compassion move into the top of your head, passing through you, dropping into the core of the earth. Surrender, let go. Become aware of your core and your antakarana, your central axis. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. What information, knowing, insights, that the spot of your body is trying to share with you. without any judgments, listen to your core. Listen to the more than 50 trillion cells that exist in your body. And pay attention to any information, insights, and knowing that may want to show up for you. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all false beliefs, false identities, all masks, all personas. And as I move into a harmonious relationship with my God self, thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Take a very deep and slow breath. And whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I want to thank all of you for listening tonight. If you're listening to us on Patreon, thank you for your support. To all of you on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to the channel to increase the algorithm. Sending you my deepest love, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, Pierre.
Thank you.
Much love.
Good night.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night, everyone. Good night.